Well, the meeting of ZBA tonight. Turn it over to him to start.
All right. Good evening, Joe and members of the board. I'll talk us through a few hearing procedures just first, because I know for many of you this is your first ZBA meeting with us, and just for the benefit of those in the audience tonight, I'll just ask for you to bear with us tonight. It's been a while since we've done a ZBA meeting, but I've just got a few little hearing procedures to review quickly, and then a few minutes we'll invite you up. Whoever's going to be speaking tonight in the public or with the case would come up for a quick swearing in. And we're going to start tonight with the Zoning Board of Adjustment function. That will be its own meeting, which then when it concludes will need to be adjourned so I can reset the recording. And then we'll go into the planning board item, which is related to the same property. So just a quick word about some hearing procedures. When we get to the case in a few minutes, basically it flows like all interested parties wishing to make a statement will be sworn in. The chairman will call the case, in which case there's just the one case tonight. I will give an introduction and summary of the case. I'll introduce, if there's anything else that needs to be said, I'll introduce a representative from the development seeking the variance. Anyone that wants to speak from the public would be recognized for or against. This is technically a quasi-judicial hearing. This is not like a huge land use case. This is a basic sign variance, so I don't see a lot of folks in the public, but there are members of the public here tonight that we'll have to pause and see if anyone wishes to speak. Zoning board members can ask for any additional information from anyone speaking. We'll conclude the public hearing when you get ready to make a motion in case there's any questions or whatnot. So board can discuss the case. They can ask more questions of the developer or anybody they wish to. For a zoning board of adjustments case, it does require 4/5 majority. We do have quorum with 5 of you here tonight. So far, Mr. Bowder's not in attendance, but so that would mean 4 of you would take an affirmative vote in order to grant their variance. And now, that being said, the first thing you would probably want to go ahead and do is call for approval of the minutes from the last meeting, which was a long time ago.
Obviously, we don't meet with the zoning board very often.
Yeah.
The last meeting we had was in April of 2016. So nobody was here hardly. Approve the minutes. He was here anyway. Back to motion to approve. Make the motion. Are there a second?
A second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. We're approved. Then I'll turn it back to you.
Okay. Let me just take a note here.
Eric, I recused myself from voting since I wasn't there for the
Okay.
minutes.
The next thing we need to do, and I'll just say a quick reference, this next item will be in regards to variance number 2023-01, a variance request for consideration of sign variances on a currently unaddressed parcel on Asheville Highway. It's at the intersection of Asheville Highway and Naples Road, which is a satellite parcel of Fletcher for a new Sheetz convenience store or gas station. The first thing, just a little housekeeping, is because this is a quasi-judicial hearing, basically anybody speaking, whether it's myself, representing the developer, and if anybody in the public wishes to speak tonight, need to come up and come swear in. We can do it as a group, and Joe will read you can stay seated and read your sheet, so, but anybody that needs to speak, come on up. And you've got the statement, the affirmation.
Okay. Do you swear or affirm that testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Do.
Thank you.
Feel like I'm on a court TV show. Appreciate it. Everybody does have their packets from last month, I assume. That's good. We were originally scheduled for this a month ago and did have to postpone it tonight, which we appreciate. It is. For the record, I am going to read the PIN number to the property. It is 9651-67-0177, just to get that on the record. The applicant in this case is seeking variances from the sign ordinance or Article 11 from our Land Development Code. Before I jump into the staff report, I want to give you a little bit of backstory in the parcel because basically the reason we're here tonight is this property got zoned when it was taken in by the town. It was zoned as C1 commercial, which our C1 zoning district is primarily here along our Hendersonville Road frontage right through the center of town with all the fancy design standards and whatnot, and even gets into the heart of Fletcher overlay, which this parcel is obviously not in the heart of Fletcher overlay. I did bring the zoning map here just to show you, if you can see the whole town, you know, this satellite parcel is this pie shaped all the way at the extreme south edge, not tied to our current town limits, just for the public. The rationale for the zoning behind this was nothing more than the C2 zoning district, which is primarily known as the Interstate Commercial Zoning District, which that zoning district would have suited this better, being right there near the interstate interchange. Since it was vacant land, there were several parcels taken in by the town that were vacant, where it was zoned to C1 purely to avoid any developer from coming in and requesting adult uses, which was a permitted use in the C2 zoning district. So it was largely for lack of a better word, a defensive zoning against some uses that they didn't want to see come to fruition here. We knew at the time that was happening based on the types of food and gas station and hotel uses that emerge in an interstate commercial zoning district. I knew in the back of my mind that this was going to cause some headaches with regard to the sign ordinance, because the C1 zoning district is much more restrictive on signage. Typically, on a parcel like this, they would only be allowed 120 square feet, 12 feet in height total, and they actually have the advantage of being allowed a little bit more signage because it's a larger lot. Typically, on a smaller lot, it's an 80 square foot allowance. The petitioner in this case, for their tall pole-mounted sign, they are asking for allowance. They are asking for a sign allowance that would be consistent with the C2 zoning district. In essence, to have a 75-foot tall sign, and their square footage proposed is 198.5 square feet. So that is basically a height variance of 63 feet and a size variance of 78.5 square feet. Additionally, I want to mention they also have to seek a variance for the directional signage that they would like to have. They're proposing a number of, I think it's, what is it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7 directional signs that basically just say autos and trucks, trying to direct the autos to one area and the trucks to another area. Typically, our directional signs are only allowed to be 3 square feet and 3 feet in height, the real little tiny ones. They're proposing 13.5 square feet and 5 feet in height, largely for, I guess, safety considerations and trying to move the truck traffic in and out. Wes Hall from the Sheets Company can speak to that more if you have other questions on the reasoning for that. So, on the specifics of the variance request, they're asking for a 10.5 square foot size variance and a 2-foot height variance on the directional signs. So in a nutshell, that is the nature of the request. We did post the Z-sign on the property, we posted a legal ad in the paper, sent notices to the abutting property owners. I've had several phone calls just asking kind of what was going on, so I don't know, in a moment we'll open it up to see if anybody from the public wishes to speak on it. But for now, I can introduce Wes Hall.
As you said, we are requesting those variances simply for we call it the sky sign, which is the one that will be visible from I-26. That is just to meet for the C2 zoning allowance is what we're going for there. That design would fall well within those ranges. For the directional signage, there's 4 signs. They're double-sided, and that is our safe circulation signage. We use it. There's a minimum letter sizing on there just for visibility for the truck traffic and our car customers coming in, knowing which way to go. With this site plan, working with DOT, they did restrict our leftover access, and so we felt like it would be very beneficial here to make sure that the safe circulation signage was in place and very visible for both our C-store customer and the truck traffic that's going to come through the site. So if you guys have any questions, we've got the team here to answer any of those that you may have about that.
Just a thought I'd like to make, I think it's a good idea to be a 5-foot high sign, especially with trucks, and you'll see over what's in the lot already.
Yeah, and that's kind of part of it. We've run into this a few times, and we've seen on some sites where we don't have enough safe circulation that those are where we run into issues. So it is kind of our new standard for most of our sites that we're moving forward with.
I do agree that signage for the trucks and directional signage would be useful, and safety would be best served by that. Could you elaborate about the main sign? Why would you like it to be so high?
Yeah, at this site, this is what we call kind of our hybrid store, where we have our typical C-store with our car customers, and then we also have a commercial diesel offering in the rear for trucks. For this one, because it is so close to the interstate, we would like to be able to get some visibility and have our pricer up there. And that way we can capture that traffic that's traveling on I-26, as well as the other monument sign that's smaller that would be on Asheville Highway.
I want to interject one thing too. I forgot to mention in my intro. There was some precedent with some of these other satellite parcels a few years back. They're not new anymore, but at the time there's a Bojangles and a McDonald's down there that came in similarly, that also had similar variances granted for the consideration of the C2 zoning district. There had been a big conversation about whether or not there was a way to figure out, as they were taking these parcels in, whether there could be a way to just grant them C2 signage. And apart from the variance process, there really wasn't a way forward. And there was no interest at the time in rezoning it just because of that question. So I just want to mention that. I forgot a minute ago.
So how does this height compare then to those?
Approximately, well, actually, I believe the Bojangles sign wound up being about 50 feet tall. I don't know why they didn't request the 75-foot height, probably because they're not quite as visible from the interstate as these guys would be. I do recall the McDonald's, though, they got granted a sign taller than what C2 would allow. I think that was closer to 90 or 100 feet tall. So this one that's 75 feet tall would meet the height limit of the C2 district.
And we do have some, just to add on to that, we have some renderings, some 3D renderings done that he can show you. We didn't have anywhere to plug it in up here, but he can show you kind of what we expect it to look like once it's constructed.
I apologize for not having a laptop in here. Just got late work and didn't have the tech for it tonight.
And that's tall enough to be seen from the highway?
Yeah, there's visibility. You'll see here we have one shot from I-26 where you can see the sign because it's at the back of the property, closer to the highway.
So what it looks like from there, there's your sky sign there. And then this is from the interstate where you can see it. Yeah. It's small.
Yeah, it's not as big as you think it would be from the interstate. Yeah, but we do get some visibility there, and
so there's your sky sign
truck
we're
drivers
asking
are able
for.
to see that price.
So that would be
it all ahead of time.
That's
like right here.
yeah. So we updated those, and they didn't get them to you. That's going to be right here.
Yeah, that one's
This
digital.
gets further back there.
So it's actually, so that's why
Yeah, it's probably about right here. Yeah, And, so that's there. Wes, do you want to explain the DOT feedback, just of why we pushed last month and why we're here today?
Yeah, so we,
That's
at the
been
last
more
minute
than
before
25.
the last meeting, DOT weighed in, the local jurisdiction
Yeah,
was
that's
okay with the design we had originally had, where there's a right and right out, we had full access there, there's leftover movement. Congestion management in Raleigh did not like that, and they wanted us to convert that to a right in, right out. So we had to add a concrete outlet out there to restrict that leftover access, and it also caused us to add some interconnectivity in our site that we didn't have previously, and so we needed a little time to update our safe circulation drawings. The tall sign did not change from what we originally were proposing, but the safe circulation and the site plan did, so we wanted to postpone until this month so we could get all our documentation correct.
Very minimal change compared to what you're looking at today. So here's where the sky sign would be in the back of the site. And what happened was this access is a right in, right out, so we had to get our cars down there. So that's where we had to revisit what these said.
When do you plan to break ground in the project?
You know, as soon as possible. I think this one right now, I believe it will be later this year. You know, a lot of that depends on approvals and DOT and some of those timelines, but if it's up to us, I've got a shovel in the truck, we can go there right now.
Just like that. That's what I showed you.
One question for you, Eric.
Sure.
So looking at this, that document in the back about the Board of Adjustment does not have unlimited discretion in this. I mean, the one, that number A, that there are practical difficulties or unnecessary hardships in the way of carrying out the strict letter of the Land Development Code. If we approve this, I mean, how is that, I guess.
This is an unusual variance request, and it's you know, I don't have a good answer for that. You know, like you're supposed to be able to argue a hardship as to why you can't make a reasonable use of what you're allowed. And as I mentioned, you know, it's the only hardship here was the zoning that was placed on the property that limited their signage. Speaking as the zoning administrator, I look at this property and go, the zoning is kind of incongruous for the nature of the city that it should have been in. So this is not a typical, in my mind, you know, variance request. This is just sort of, in my mind, you know, correcting an issue that should have been addressed back when the property was originally zoned. I don't think it's fair to, you know, punish the owner with onerous, like overly restrictive sign regulations at interstate commercial districts, since this wasn't the area that we were focused on, small monument signs and, you know, ground mounted signs and whatnot. So that's where basically the rationale that was used during the previous, you know, cases where the variances were granted, and that's the basis for tonight's request.
Yeah, I don't really have a problem with it. I'd rather the language be actually more truthful in the sense that really this is a competitive issue. You want that signage, not from I mean, safety, I mean, I agree with you on these signs along the road, that's safety related, but the big sign is you want visibility from
Yeah, that one for sure.
And I would rather you put that in there.
Yeah, they're kind of two separate ones. I know that, you know, there's two separate parts of the code that we're trying to address with one sign variance, because there was, you know, all the signs. But yeah, I agree with you. We would like to capture that interstate traffic and have the ability to install the C2 allows only signage.
But my personal hope is that we don't end up seeing additional satellite parcels brought in. I've never been, no offense, but I've never been a fan of satellite parcels because they, you know, spread out the services and disconnect it. But we have a few of them, and I haven't seen a move to take in new ones in a long time now. So hopefully the line gets held, and there's not a lot else down there that doesn't already have the tall signs.
I would argue that toll signage is appropriate for that area per se, being right off the interstate, and there are so many off-site drive that I was driving several times and noticed it. Not only fast food, but this motorcycle.
I know, motorcycle was huge.
I feel like it does fit the spirit and the context of that area.
No, I don't disagree with you.
So that's one of the points for the variance that I would strongly argue for sure.
Especially the already there, kind of parents, so,
If not there, where would you want that?
yeah.
But I would be interested.
Joe, I would say that now would be appropriate to call and see if there's anybody else from the public that wishes to speak either for or against.
Okay. Anybody else would like to speak? Or against the project?
I'm for it.
Did we get any?
I'm sorry, I said I'm for it.
Did we get any other feedback?
As far as the phone calls that I received, they were all really just more to do with having seen the Z sign and curious to know what was happening on the property, neither for nor against. And I had one call from someone who was representing the interests of the party selling the property to the potential developer, and was just keen on finding out whether they were going forward. So I didn't have any negative feedback. I had one call from a business that was concerned with the location of the sign and wondering whether or not it would affect visibility of their sign, which this one wouldn't, but I did explain that there's not anything that guarantees that your own line of sight won't be altered ever so slightly by additional development. So that was it in a nutshell.
So if there's anything else about any of y'all would like to speak, I take this meeting talk to the board. It's not, I think, this is not a new thing. It's, we have something better, just like we did that one time, a number of years ago. Having improved the work. What I'm saying is not going to change anything for the future, because this is not going to see one, we have to have our same kind of approval. So I don't see any problem. Any problem with the questions?
If you could just speak a little closer to your mic point.
Second?
Okay. Take a vote, all those in favor of approving?
Aye.
So that one passes, and then really just need to adjourn the ZBA function. Then if I could ask for about a 2 or 3 minute reset to go reset the recorder.
Okay, you're adjourned. You're waiting.